Hello and welcome back to the She Who Dares Wins podcast. And my guest today is Nicole. Nicole,
Hello.
welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, so She Who Dares Wins. Tell me how you have dared and won.
Oh my goodness. So many ways. I think my latest escapades are the main thing in terms of the field sports community. Once I realised my love of not necessarily shooting, but the whole experience. So being outdoors, harvesting your own food, cooking your own food, growing your own food, and the reward that came with that, I was hooked. And at the time, I was with someone that was very much, was very controlling and was very much, well, you can't do that and you can't do this and you can't have a bigger gun than me and you can't, all this kind of stuff. And each hurdle that was put in front of me, I just thought, no, I am going to do it. It was like, oh, you have to wear this if you're going wildfowl. I was like, no, I'm going to wear this because I'm cold. I am black. I am not made for this weather, okay? I'm not made to stand ankle deep in freezing cold water for 2 hours waiting for ducks to fly over my head. Each time, each thing that was thrown at me, I just be like, no, I'm going to do it my way. Within the realms of what you're allowed to do, obviously, in the shooting code. But, and the culmination of that was me then going for my firearms license. So I had a shotgun license for years, and friends had been bringing me carcasses of deer to have for myself to butcher and to eat. And I thought, do you know what? I go on at other people all the time about, if you can eat meat, you should be able to kill it. And I'm not doing that with the deer. So then I started deer stalking with friends, learning more about it, and then I got my license. And the whole time I was going through that process, which took a couple of years, there was this constant voice there going, you won't be able to do it. You won't be able to shoot a deer. It's a sentient being. I've tried to do it, and I couldn't do it. And I lifted the gun and I looked, and I was like, oh, no, I can't. And I was just like, that's okay, but that's you. Like, I think all animals are sentient beings. So, and I have hunted other animals. I don't think one is more sentient than the other. I think they're all sentient. But I go very much into hunter-gatherer mode when I'm out there. You have this respect for your quarry. It's not the same as, I suppose, like with army training or something, you kind of just switch into this different mode and it's just like, da-da-da-da. It's not like that. It's more of a heightened awareness. You do still pick and choose, but yes, I could pull that trigger, and yes, I did get my firearms license, and got a 243 caliber rifle, which he didn't have.
Suck it.
Funny enough, once that happened, he was like, oh, maybe I could get one. I was like, oh, you can shoot deer now, can you? And now that I've got a bigger one than you, you don't like it all of a sudden. But yeah, I just put myself out there because I enjoyed it. I didn't care if it was a man's world. I didn't care if it was a white world, which is what I perceived, and actually was my experience for the majority of the 15 years I've been shooting. I didn't care if it was more of an upper class world in some of the places and events that I was at. I was just loving it. It's like, I'm getting out of this what I want to get out of this. If I go somewhere and people don't like me being there because I'm female or because I'm black, I don't care. Actually, it ended up not being the case. Nobody cared that I was female or black.
Right.
So it was even better that I did put myself in those situations, because had I not, because I was fearful of those things, I would have missed out on so many great experiences, because it would have been the wrong thought to have. Everyone's been so welcoming.
We do preconceive stuff, don't we, that actually doesn't kind of exist.
Yeah.
And sometimes when people talk to me about barriers to getting into something, you kind of cotton on and think, oh, is that an internal monologue or an actual thing?
Exactly. And it was like, the reality was, yes, at the time, I think there was maybe only 20% of people holding licenses were female, right. Maybe less than that actually. And yes, when I went to the game fairs and the shows, there weren't any other black people. There might have been 2 in the 3 days I was there. So yes, it was true to an extent of, oh, there's not many people like me at all, but it wasn't true that we weren't welcomed.
Okay.
It's just that a lot of people like me don't know about this world.
Yeah.
Don't know they can get into it, let alone whether they want to or not. So,
which leads nicely into my question of, how did you get into this?
so I was gifted a clay pigeon shooting day for my birthday when I was 24, 25. And I loved it. I loved the feeling of shooting a shotgun. Like, yeah. It just felt great. I was always a tomboy and I always wanted to be in the army until I realised that I might have to kill people. Then I was like, okay, I can't do that. So yeah, I just loved the feeling. And I'm very competitive against myself, highly competitive. And I really like push myself and I really kick myself as well if I get it wrong or, you know, and I was just hooked. I loved the smell of the gunpowder when I opened the gun to reload, like all of it I was loving. And then I was like, okay, what else can I do? And it's like, oh, you want to do more? Well, you can do this, you can do this. And, you know, and luckily for me, I had a person that was aware of that world I was living with at the time that could show me it. So yeah, I went out and I did a driven pheasant shoot on a very large private estate with a friend of a friend of a friend who invited us. That was amazing. I had no idea about that world. None about driven shooting. And it was like, oh, this is great. And then at the end of the day, a lot of people didn't take the birds, which wasn't the end of the world because the gamekeeper would then sell, you know, whatever was left over. But I was like, or some people would just take their brace that they're allowed, which is 2 birds.
Right. Is that like a legal?
No, it's like a traditional thing.
Oh, okay.
It's like you just take a brace and that's 2 birds. It's like, okay, this is my brace, thank you very much. And I was like, what's going to happen with the rest of the birds? He's like, oh, well, you know, a couple of the beaters might take some, the rest I'll just take to the game dealers. And I was like, can I have some more? He was like, yeah, take as much as you want. I was like, okay.
Had you ever taken birds before?
I didn't even know.
You were just taking them for...
I just knew that it was food. I'd never even cooked them. I'd never even eaten a pheasant or a partridge. But I was just like, this is food. Like, this is free food. Because I hadn't paid to go. So yeah, I took as much as I could. And then I got home and I was like, right, what do I do with these then? You know, and, you know, he showed me what to do and how to breast them and blah, blah, blah. And then I was cooking them. I was looking on Google, like, pheasant recipes. And I was just going through and just finding what suited me and then making little twists and tweaks to them to suit me even more, my palate even more. That was it. I absolutely loved it. And then from there, I just went on and did more and more different types of shooting.
Does that connection between shooting and then eating always happen? Like, does every shooter do this?
No. It always happens for me. Always. But no, there are a small minority of... a very, very small minority of shooters who don't necessarily have that connection. They have more connection to the sport, which is fine because at the end of the day, they're still contributing in a way that helps other people, if that makes sense. So their money and their presence helps the gamekeeper keep his job, and the money helps go towards the conservation of that land, and, you know, so, and it helps the beaters who, you know, teenagers, instead of getting in trouble at the weekend, they're coming on a shoot and getting paid 20 quid tip or 40 quid, you know, whatever it may be to go and do the beating. So it still helps, but that's not why I do it. It's definitely a connection to my ancestors, really. I wish we all lived how we used to live as humans, you know, off the earth.
So basic and back to, back to basics.
Yeah, you understand more. You're so much more connected with nature. And I mean nature as a whole, not just the things that you're shooting, but all the other things and animals and life and plant life that's out there that you don't pay attention to and you don't understand if you're not a shooter, you know. Yeah, I find it fascinating. You know, I find it fascinating to open up the crop of a pigeon when I'm doing pest control for a farmer and saying, oh, yeah, actually 20 of the 30 pigeons shot today had rapeseed plant in their crop. So I know that that's from your crops.
Yeah. And
so I know I've helped. But actually 10 of them had wheat. So they've come from somewhere else. And they were about to attack your crop, but I got them. You know, and it's just all of it. Like the taste, is it different because I'm cooking one up and that's been eating mainly wheat and barley? Does this one taste different because it's eaten, you know, mainly rapeseed? Or millet, whatever it is. It's like, it's just, yeah, it makes you definitely more interested, more respectful, more curious, and more careful about your food, you know, not wasting so much and cooking it properly so that, you know, you're not going to be thrown away because it tastes like crap.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
And just respecting the life, you know, this kind of full circle of life. You know, when I used to live on a farm, and once I'd shot all the pigeons and whatever it may have been, duck, you know, that I'd got that day, breasted them, the carcasses would be walked 1/4 mile to where I knew there was a little foxhole and be dumped by the foxhole, and by the next morning they'd be gone because the little fox would go and feed its little cubs. You know, it's a circle of life.
Yeah.
Obviously, some of those foxes would not live to see a year because of predator control. So, you know, they still need to be managed as well. But whilst they're on this earth, they may as well eat well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
you know.
So how did this become like something you just got into to, like, I didn't even know, and this is really sad, but there was a job there in terms of course there is, like, farmers need pest control, but also there's, like, you can work on, like, taking people out shooting. That industry, like, were you hooked then and were you like, this is totally for me? And was there a transition from another job or?
No, not really. So I don't get paid to do this. This is just a hobby for me, and it always will be. I was always doing work in the background. So, for instance, I was a manager of a gym for a while, and I was so busy, and I was a mum, so I was like coming home from work and then taking him to basketball practice, then coming back, and it actually was a bit of a release as well to just be like, come back and go, right, I'll be back in a minute, sling my gun over my shoulder, you know, 6 o'clock in the evening, walk down to the farmer's field where he had a drain that the ducks would sometimes come in season, obviously, and just sit there with my dog, and then an hour later come back home with 2 duck. But in that hour, I just had the peace of nature. I've had barn owls flying by at a distance where I could just reach out and grab them, you know, because I was in my camo, so they couldn't see me. You know, and just hearing all the calls of nature and watching the moon slowly come out and all of that, even if I didn't come home with the 2 duck, was just peaceful. It was beautiful.
You're making me rethink I need half an hour out to have a bath.
Yeah.
Or to scroll, the doom scroll.
No.
Like,
not the doom scroll, no.
But it's like, there's this other world that could be done.
It's amazing. And that, when I started doing that for that reason, it then became not for that reason, if that makes sense. So that's a part of it still, but I realised, hang on a minute, I feel so much more in touch with myself, in touch with my ancestors, in touch with nature. It just felt, that became more like normal life that I wanted to get back to, and everything else that was normal life in society, I wanted to escape from. You know, I didn't want to go and be the manager at a gym and smell sweaty bodies all day and do health and safety reports all day and fire staff and do, you know, I wanted to just be out there. And also, I noticed my health changing in a good way. You know, I was eating healthier. My body showed it. I was carrying gear. I was walking to go to a spot, carrying gear, you know, all of that. I was exercising more, and I just felt, it just felt amazing, you know. So yeah, long may it continue. I don't plan on giving this up until arthritis takes over my whole body. I am not, or I become blind or something. I'm not giving this up because it's a part of me, you know. And especially when I started deer stalking, that's a completely different kind of set of skills and field craft. But that even more so made me like, I was like, this is what my ancestors used to do. Like, you know, whether it's the skill of, you know, shooting a moving target, I was like, my ancestors used to do that, but with spits, with like darts and stuff. And they still do in some parts of the world, you know. And then the kind of stalking, the hunting, it sounds it might sound silly, but when I think back to how our ancestors were, and some humans on the planet still are, you know, they behave like the animals. You know, a lot of African dance is based on animal movement. And when you're hunting, you do that. You know, when I'm deer stalking, especially in woodland, I'm like taking little steps and then stopping, because that's what deer do. Or animals, they don't just go stomp, 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 stomp. They go, I'm going to eat a little bit of this. I'm going to eat a little bit of that. And you start moving like an animal, you know.
Is that like something you learn to do, or is it just like your subconscious?
It's just my subconscious, just something I thought, cool. Oh, hang on a minute. If I move like this, I'm going to look like a person and I'm going to sound like a person. Yeah. If I move like the muntjac, they might just think I'm another muntjac, you know. So, yeah, I've never felt so connected to my food, to nature, to my ancestors, and so grounded as I do now.
And the community. Talk me through, this was something new to you. You know, my perception, here we go, here's how I lose people. My perception, and I think I said this with both Amy and Beaky, who came on from the fishing world, is like tweed, a lot of money, going shooting weekends, rah-rah.
Yeah.
And was that something you experienced off the bat? Is that not how it is? Talk me through it.
Do you know what? I nearly came in my tweed jacket, my Massey Birch tweed.
I actually love tweed now, and my brother's bought me a tweed hat.
Beautiful. Yes!
He's like, you need to use that. And I'm like, okay.
God. See, that's the thing that sometimes I'm like, I need to put the afro back in braids, wear the cap, but hats just don't suit me. But no, I nearly came in with Massey Birch today. I love tweed. And yes, there is that sector in the shooting world, of course. You know, in this country, that's how it started. You know, it started with the gentry, however many hundreds of years ago. That's how it started. So, of course, that part of that world will still be there, but it sits alongside all the other types of people that are there as well. So, I kind of came across it on my first driven shoot I mentioned earlier. They weren't. There's old money and there's new money, right? So they were new money. They were talking about their helicopters and, you know, oh, where am I going to park my plane this winter? And where am I going? It was that kind of level of money, and I was like sat there going, this is not my world. What am I going to talk about? But they weren't posh. They were new money. But they were still welcoming. They didn't care. They knew. They could tell by looking at my car outside. It was a battered old 20-year-old 4x4 next to their brand new Range Rovers. You know, they could tell I didn't have money, but they were still interested in me. They were still just people interested in people. And the main thing was they wanted to know that you could shoot and that you were safe.
I was going to say, the level playing field surely is like you can either shoot or you can't.
Yeah. Especially nowadays, because it's like, my money's as good as your money. You know, you might be able to pay £700 for a shoot day without batting an eyelid. I can still pay, you know, I will have to save up that money to do it, but I can still pay and I can still do it. I'm allowed.
Yeah.
You know, so that levels out the playing field. It's like, well, my money's as good as yours. I've paid to be on this peg just like you've paid to be on that peg. But can you shoot? And are you going to swing your gun through the line, or are you going to be greedy and take my birds that are coming over me?
Ooh,
or, you know, it's still, that's all you care about when you're on that peg. It's like, are you safe? Yeah. Are you greedy? No. Are you safe? Yeah. Are you greedy? No. Great. Good. And also, you kind of want someone that's good next to you because you enjoy watching other people do well and have a good skill. Like, there's lots of kind of shouting on, oh, that was great. Oh, brilliant. Or there's also the kind of tipping your hat to the ones that get through and make it to another day or another year. You know, it's like, yeah, you deserve to get through that night. That was great. Go on, Fezzy. But no, there's lots of... Actually, where I came across the wealthiest and the poshest, shall we say, people was after the kind of Shoot and Girl with an Afro brand got bigger, and I started getting invited to events and book launches. The Duke of Norfolk released a book about partridges and how he's managed to kind of develop like a wild partridge population, which is amazing. That's something that I want us to do more of in this community. And that's where I met these people more than before. But again, they were just, oh my God, shooting girl with an afro. You are great. You keep doing what you're doing for our, for the field sports community, blah, blah, blah. There was no, oh yeah, so how did you get an invite? It was never, ever like that.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's been the most welcoming community.
What percentage are women that go shooting? Like if you go to a shoot...
For the first 10 to 12 years, I was always the only woman on a shoot. I didn't care. As long as you can keep up with the banter, which you know what it's like in the construction industry. If you can keep up with the banter, or you don't mind a bit of banter, you're fine. They don't care, man, woman or beast, But yeah, I was always the only one. And actually a lot of the other women were either beaten, so they were out with their dogs and flags working.
Talk me through that, because terminology. So what's beating?
Beating is literally that. You're beating a stick on a tree in a bush to get the birds to fly out over the guns.
Right, okay.
Some people do it with dogs, some without. The dogs will flush. So I used to do it as well with my late spaniel, and they will work zigzagging through the undergrowth and flush the birds out. It's great exercise. My God, it's tiring. I have so much respect for beaters. Honestly, it's so tiring. So yeah, most of the women would be there, or on the more prestigious shoots, they would be dressed fully in tweed, but in the background, just bravo, cheering on. And
with the picnic.
Yeah,
I mean, I would be there for
children,
that.
Like, oh, look, Daddy's done a great shot there. So that was where I saw women for the first 10 years or so. Now it's like exploded with like girl groups and events for just ladies, and the last 3 to 5 years, it's exploded, and it's wonderful to see. I'm not necessarily an advocate, though, for getting ladies into shooting, shall we say. Even though I'm female, I'm not one of these that's like totally flying the flag of like, let's do more women's groups. I'm just like, let's get more people.
Yeah.
Whoever you are.
Because it's not for everyone, right?
No, exactly.
And I think that's an important thing. I think we put too much pressure on get more in.
Definitely.
And it's like, no, just get those who want to come in.
Exactly. And also it's showing them that there's more to the world. You don't have to come in and pick up a gun to be a part of the field sports community. So you don't want to alienate those that might be interested but are not bothered about the gun side of things. All of the groups that we have at the moment, ladies groups, are about shooting, whether it's clay, whether it's game, whether it's shotgun, whether it's rifle. Where are the ladies groups, for conservation, for working your dog, for making crafts out of leftovers of shoots, so empty cartridges and things? Where are the, what about those people that want to get into that side of things and don't want to pick up a gun?
Foraging, does that come under?
Foraging,
yeah.
I mean, there's so much that we can forage in this country that probably 90% of the population don't even realise.
I think the only thing I could think of is blackberries. How bad is that?
but that's, 10, 15 years ago, I would have been the same. I didn't know about sloe berries. I didn't know that you could harvest sap. Oh my goodness, the sap of a birch tree is better than any sugar or honey or sweetener out there. It is the most delicious thing, and the gin that you can make with it. There's so much. There's grasses that you can eat that taste like apple. It's insane. There's so much. Obviously, mushrooms.
Yeah.
That's another world that I'm not going to go into because I don't trust myself. But I still am fascinated by them when I see them. Like, oh, mushrooms. Oh. I've recently bought some books. Actually, I think it was last year that because I want to do more on that side of things. Again, when I lived on the farm and I could plant my own things, it's like, okay, sloe berries. What can I use those for? Nettles. What can I use those for? Dock leaves. You can eat dock leaves. There's so much out there that I was like using in day-to-day food to zhuzh it up a little bit, change it up, make it a bit more interesting, but also the health benefits.
Yeah, it's huge.
That come from, unfortunately in this country, because we've been heavily farming, a lot of our mud is rubbish. There's hardly any. That's why they have to add nutrients. That's why they're starting to do, I hate the terminology rewilding, but on farms they're starting to change their crops because we need our soil to be better. So actually sometimes we're eating this veg and there's not that much goodness in it because the soil's so poor. Yet the places that haven't been farmed and are untouched, the wild places that are, you know, managed but not farmed, you know, you walk through a woodland and you see some nettles growing, they've not been sprayed, they've not been, you know, none of that. You're getting the full goodness, you know, grass meadows that have never been farmed, you're getting the full goodness from those, you know, edible flowers and those grasses that you can eat. And
the same with the meat that you shoot. It's literally from wild to table.
Yes.
There's it's not been pumped with any liquid, it's not been cleaned with any chemicals.
Exactly. And that, I think that's why I prefer now eating venison, because they're less likely to have eaten crops. They do still eat crops, some of these deer, and they are a pest, but they're more likely to be eating bark and like leaves and, you know, trees and bushes and things like that, and stuff that's in the scrubland. Whereas pigeons, obviously, I know when I open them up, I'm like, oh, you've eaten that crop, and that's probably been sprayed. I'm still going to eat you because it's still better than you being pumped with steroids or whatever else, you know, and water and whatever else. But or ducks, for instance, wildfowling. Oh, you know, duck and geese that have just come from Iceland, the wildest of the wild. You know, what are they eating? Pure goodness. And that pure goodness is going into my body.
Yeah.
And you can taste it. You can taste the difference.
So if you went and ate like supermarket meat,
I taste the difference instantly. It's a necessity because I can't hunt all the time.
Yeah.
And because I feed my dog now, I've got Rigby, my puppy, who's almost
he's very cute.
Thank you. I feed him as well, so I need even more.
The best fed dog ever.
He literally is. He lives like a king and he knows it. But no, because of that, I do have to supplement with supermarket food or butchers when I can get to the butcher. And yeah, I hate it because I can taste the difference. Same with eggs. Like, I used to have my own chickens, and the difference in the yolk, the strength and the flavour compared to... There's no flavour in supermarket eggs. None.
Yeah.
So yeah.
My kids we've got a little local farm place up near us, near the school actually, and you can go and collect the eggs, and the chickens are running around, and like, you're like, that's where it comes from, boys.
Perfect.
But when I take them home, they've got like fluff and poop on them. They're like, ooh, and they all look different. And I'm like, yeah, because no chicken's the same.
Exactly.
Like, and it's so nice for the next generation to. I don't want them to lose that.
Yes, and those chickens, you know, they're eating insects. They're scratching around. They're not just eating what they're fed, you know, and they're not necessarily medicated, and they're not, you know, so. Yeah, you can taste the difference. It's very disappointing for me when I have to have a meal that's not, and also. I lose out on part of the experience, which is reliving the memory
of actually
shooting it, which 99% of what I shoot, I remember. I label it, and I'll be getting out of the freezer, like, oh, I'll get that one from Feb. What's this? Oh, Chinese water deer. Oh yeah, that was that one where, and as I'm getting it out the freezer, thawing it, you know, cooking it, I'm remembering everything about that day, the fun or the difficulty. Oh yeah, I had to crawl on my belly 150 yards to get to this, you know. You're reconnecting with that experience, and then when I'm tasting it or I'm looking at it going, oh yeah, I can't eat that bit because that was damaged because I had to shoot it from that side, because I couldn't, you know, all of that is connection. And then I remember shooting a lame stag, and I shot him because he was lame. I forgot all the other ones. I was like, let's put him out of his misery. But he actually tasted pretty horrendous because he was pumped full of hormones. And so he didn't taste as good, and he was very tough. So I just he went all to the dog. I cooked one bit, which was like the best bit, the loin on the back. And if that isn't good,
then the rest
is certainly not going to, you know, so the rest went to Rigby. But it's still that connection of like, I understand why. It's because he was like, there's a woman, a female deer, like 3 meters in front of him, and he was so lame he couldn't reach her. He was like, come here, love, that's what they do with their tongues when they're like ready to mate. And she was just standing there like, I'm here, here, come and get me. She didn't move, and he couldn't get to her. He was that bad.
How sad.
But because he was ready to go.
Oh, that's why the hormones were
the
going.
hormones like pumping, like, oh, I'm gonna get her, I'm gonna get her, I'm gonna get you, and he couldn't. So that taste was hormone, you know. And now I know in the future, if I find a lame deer again and I harvest a lame deer, I won't even bother. You know, I'm gonna cook him up, and Rigby can have him.
So there's a huge appreciation whilst you're eating it, because I think we've become this food on the table, it's fuel, onto the next. But you've got the whole process to be like, you know how much hard work has gone into it as well.
Definitely. You appreciate it so much more. The reward is like through the roof. And the connection with the animal as well. And like, you know, when you go to check the deer, you're not just shooting it and going, oh, chop, 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 yum, yum. There's a whole process between it getting to your table of checking it to see if it's got disease. Depending on the season, it may be a pregnant female. So you may actually have to deal with that side of it as well. There's so much that you have to be prepared for and deal with to check that it's a healthy animal. And as you're doing that, you're kind of almost reliving this animal's life with it. You know, so when I shot this lame buck, I was like, okay, so let's see why you're lame then. Oh, yeah, oh, look at that. Oh, you poor thing. You see this massive lump sticking out. And it's like, oh, I wonder if you got hit by a car, mate. Or like got, you know, nudged by a car or something, or got stuck in a fence, or got in a fight with someone and he nicked you. But there was no open wounds, actually, so I didn't think it was that. I think it was like broken, basically. So he'd been clipped by a car or something. And you're feeling, or I do anyway, all that emotion for that animal, the empathy, and the, you know, and then you feel the relief of like, I'm so glad I found you. I'm so glad I put you out your misery, because you would have had a horrible life if you'd have continued, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a whole process.
It is, yeah. Take me back to the process of gun in hand. The quietness, the stillness, I imagine. What kind of things are going through your head? Like, are there things that you learn as a shooter, or is it very much just like a natural state of figuring out how you shoot?
In the beginning, so the first few years, it's very much focusing on the shooter side of things, making sure you're doing things right. There's a lot of species that you can't shoot, you're not allowed to, so learning how to identify in almost blackness that what you're shooting is the right thing, you know. Making sure your gun's loaded, making sure the safety's on, like all of those things are very prominent the first 2 to 3 years. It's a bit like driving. Yeah. You know, you have to think about everything when you first pass, and you're on your own, you're like, oh, okay, so that, I have to do that. Whereas 5 years down the line, you're doing it, changing gear without thinking, and, you know, and then you can just enjoy the drive or the chat with whoever's in the car with you. It's the same with shooting. So the first kind of 3 years, it's very much, okay, have I done this right? And have I remembered to pack my cartridges? And have I, you know, and then there's the 10% of, oh, that was nice. Oh, a barn owl, you know, whereas later on, it's very much the packing and everything is just second nature, and it's almost building the excitement of nature, if that makes sense. Like, it's not the excitement of, I'm going to go shoot something. It's like, oh my goodness, I can't wait to be sat in that marsh on my own and watch the sun go down and start hearing the, you know, all the different wildlife that you know what it is. You know, when I first went out on the marsh and I heard, I was like, what the fuck is that? Oh God, there's something coming to me. It's a werewolf. Werewolf doesn't even sound like that, but it doesn't matter. In my head, it was a werewolf coming to get me. But it was a stork, or it was a, you know, and it's like sounds that I didn't know because I didn't spend time in the countryside. Fast forward 4 or 5 years, it's like,
you know what that is.
All right, heron. That signals that within the next 20 minutes or so, the seagulls are going to start coming over. There they are. Right, got another, let's move around a bit, get unstiff, because another 15 minutes or so, crows are going to come. Yep, there they go. Barn owl, yep, okay, I've got about another 20 minutes, half an hour, and then the ducks are going to arrive. And it's just, you learn that through through being out there, you
Yeah.
know, and then knowing which types of ducks and hearing them. You know, if you've got your electronic headset on, you can hear them before you see them. There'd be some duck that I wouldn't even bother because I'm just not a good enough, fast enough shot to shoot them. I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, here comes the widgeon. And it's like, splash.
Oh,
Right.
it's done.
Yeah, I'm just going to enjoy the sound and be like, have a nice night, mate. And then you'd hear the here come the mallard. Okay, I can shoot these ones. You know, so it's just the excitement for me now is definitely more about sitting in nature, sitting in the peace with my dog or without my dog sometimes. At the moment without him because he's not trained enough to come out with me. And just surrounding myself in, and actually your eyesight gets better.
They say senses like with different. I imagine like at dusk and stuff. Like, there's a lot going
so
on.
being a wildfowler and deer stalking as well, your eyesight gets better, especially for me because I do more evening flights. So as it's getting darker, rather than as it's getting lighter, I'm like not so scared in the dark anymore because I can see better in the dark. So I'm like, come at me, ghosts. I can see you coming from a mile away, mate.
Does it help that you've got a gun?
Yeah, that too. I tell you what, one of the things that made a big difference for me, thinking that way, because I never thought that way before, of like, oh, I've got a gun, it's okay if anyone comes near me. It's more when I started doing, using thermal imagery. So when I was working on a golf course, volunteering, keeping the rabbit population down, I was using night vision, I was using the thermal imaging, you know, and it's like I'd go to take a shot and I'd be like, I'm just going to double check that it's safe, and I'd use my thermal and there would be a dog walker walking across the, you know, of course they're not supposed to be on there, but they were. And I was like, if only you knew that I was here in the darkness. I could do whatever I want right now and you wouldn't even know who it was. Sometimes I just want to sit there and be like, Kaka! And just see them shit their pants. And but that made me less, even more confident to go out in the darkness. Oh, because I'm on my own. You know, I'm going out on my own.
Yeah.
Most of the time without the dog, and I'm female. I'm not. The last time that I was out in the darkness before I knew the countryside was walking home to the council estate at like 2 a.m, shitting my pants, and like walking with keys in my hand, one hand, and an aerosol spray in the other. Come on then. Oh, who's that coming out the alleyway? You know, that was my life of darkness, growing up in a city on a council estate. So it was all fear before. Now it's just like, I welcome the darkness and all of the wildlife that comes with it.
It's incredible. Oh, and I just want to
come and join me in
the
darkness.
It's just
come to the dark side.
I am there. And then the bigger stuff, so like the deer that you kind of moved on to, that must be like, does that send your like heart rate going when you know that you're close, or is that something you have to control?
Both, yeah. So it does, like when you, especially because they can surprise you sometimes, you could be going and stalking one, and then a bit like Jurassic Park when
when it comes to the side.
You're like, clever girl. But you know, they can surprise you, especially if you're good at, you know, you've been quiet, or you've laid low and you've laid still for 15 minutes.
They don't even know you're there.
They don't know you're there, you know. So, and then you're like, and then it's like, oh God, oh, but this one's only 50 yards away. I could just take that one, and it's in season. Or do I just, no, stick to the one, you know, do the 100-yard crawl because you were going for that one first. Oh, but it's there. Oh, it has to see me. Oh. So you get that kind of like, that sends my heart rate through the roof. And then, yes, I have to bring it back down when I'm going to take that shot 100%, because I want the animal to die instantly. And that means a good shot. So, obviously, at the end of the day, we're human. There's always going to be a margin for human error. There's always going to be a margin for equipment failure. You know, some of the top gunsmiths in the world are making these pieces of equipment, but they're still not 100% guaranteed. You know, the bullet could go into the deer and bounce and come out a different way, you know, bounce off a rib. And that means that deer's injured, and you have to be ready for that. You know, you can't kind of sit on your laurels, is the same, you know, and be complacent and be like, bang, oh, I've done the shot now, yay, time to get my deer. It's like, no, you have to be prepared for the worst always, and know what to do to follow up with that. So it's definitely it's a different skill, it's a different mindset you have to be in. You still have to be quick thinking, and you have to remain calm for when the times that, you know, it's gone wrong a couple of times for me, when I've taken other people out, when I've taken friends out, and they've done all the training, you know. One person I took out is a better shot than me, my other half, and the bullet went in exactly the right place. He shot exactly where, you know, I told him to, and it did that bouncy thing that it sometimes a bullet does, and you don't know that that's going to happen until it happens. And the deer ran, and he didn't panic, but he also felt the instant guilt that you feel of like, oh no, like I've injured. I was like, it's fine. Now I give you a chance here's a chance to educate you. Here's a learning experience. We're going to track that deer. You're now going to get a chance to learn some fieldcraft that you wouldn't have learned today if it had just dropped.
Right.
So don't worry, we'll find it. And here's how. And we did find it within 20 minutes and dispatched it, you know. But he had to then be ready for that second shot, because I made him do it. I was like, it's your stalk, it's your hunt. I'm here with you, don't worry. I'm going to talk you through everything. And, you know, he then had to, after feeling the guilt, after getting your heart rate back up again because you're walking around for 20 minutes through all the brush and all the wood, you know, you then find it's like, okay, I've got to now do it again, get my breathing down, get my heart rate down to make sure that, you know, it's dispatched properly.
It's amazing, isn't it? Because there's the mental side, then there's a physical side. There's a lot going to it.
Yeah,
but
both.
Yeah,
but I think it's made me a better person as well. It's made me more patient in life. It's definitely made me not sweat the small stuff. You know, when I was younger, I used to just get into fights all the time and just be so, as my son says, butthurt about everything. And it's definitely made me more patient. It's definitely made me more like, there's bigger stuff going on. The connection to the earth and nature and the universe has made me realise how small and insignificant I am as a human being. And that helps me to just let a lot of stuff run off my shoulders, you know. It's made me calmer, definitely. Also because I don't want to lose my licence by getting into trouble, so that helps. But and that spiritual connection helped me to realise that I was in a toxic relationship and leave it.
Okay, so it was a bit of an awakening into
definitely.
this.
Yeah, definitely. I was like, no, I am a spiritual being who is in touch with all the other beings on this planet in some way, shape or form, and I'm a wild woman who loves to be in the wild, and you are not going to clip my wings any longer.
Oh, I love
Sayonara.
that.
Yeah, that's
I love
exactly
that finding this very thing was the thing for you, not just 100%. As a hobby, but well, not hobby, but like as your world then impacted your personal life.
Definitely. I did, just before, I think 3 months before I left him, I did a big tattoo on my back. And it's the tree of life, but the bark of the tree is a woman. So it's like, and there's also a half moon within that as well. So I designed it and I said to the artist, this is what I want, you design it, kind of thing. And I was like, yes, because that's how I see myself now in my life. It's like, I'm a strong woman who's in touch with nature, who's in touch with her femininity now and her cycles, the moon, and the circle of life. And I'm doing as much as I can within my monetary ability and my skill set to do as much for nature as possible, you know. And I wanted to have that reflected in that tattoo, and then it was reflected in life, because I was like, no, I'm going to continue to be wild. I'm going to continue to live this hunter-gatherer life, and you have to be respectful of your surroundings, of your environment, whether that's nature or people, or both. And he wasn't. So I was like, I can't be around you because you are not akin with the rest of nature and what it means to be truly respectful of nature, of our planet.